What I really loved about the Fintech Summit was the caliber of the speakers and the types of people that I got to meet. It's completely unlike the normal conversations I'd be having. It's fantastic to see the broad spectrum in which we play, and just having lunch with lawyers and cybersecurity experts and having conversations that I otherwise would never have thought to have. That's been excellent.
So I gained from this FinTech event a lot of insightful knowledge into what the current focus points are of many of the vendors and organizations. There was a lot of talk around AI and its involvement. The previous event actually touched on it, whereas this one shows that there's been a huge leap forward since then in the space of less than a year. People are embracing ChatGPT, various other new emerging AI. Blockchain is still a big feature in them. So if people think that blockchain is dead, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of talk around that. Some of the bigger banks are definitely making inroads in that tech. Regulation is still moving forward. It's not there yet, but there's still definitely something on the landscape where the regulators themselves are trying to bring the regulation forward and inclusive. There's also a huge movement at the moment into inclusivity. So this is into rural areas, your informal settlements, people that are unbanked, undocumented, non-digital. How do we get them involved? How do we get them sort of banked and digital? How do we gain trust? So these are the kind of things that were coming up in the topics. It's very nice to see the collaboration between all the vendors, all the participants, the speakers. Yeah.
There was an incredibly big focus on the payment space. I was very proud because they mentioned the word pay shop many, many times, and every time they said it, I thought, yeah, I'm proud of our cloud team for what role they played. There was a focus that I picked up on the regulatory side, of course. So there was a nice mixture of those, but there's definitely an AI theme. I enjoyed how many AI talks there were. I got a chance to provide my view on how the future might look powered by AI. But that did have a definite influence on a lot of the talks, a lot of the conversations. And I think there are genuine question marks about what that might look like. Got the sense that people want to hold on to the past. Some are ready to take the leap, others not quite, and that's okay. That makes sense. But AI did come through a lot this time. We are embroiled in the difficulty of, we have the consequences to deal with now being grey listed. And I do think that there is a role that we can play and my team can play in helping our clients deal with the regulatory need for closing the gaps that have been discovered. It's unfortunate how long it takes for our industry to close those gaps, but I do believe that we're getting better and faster at it. I've seen an incredible unity across the clients, across lines that previously I never saw people collaborating on to get moving. So that gives me a lot of hope. Although it wasn't a massive feature of the Fintech Summit, I think what did come out publicly is definitely an echo of that collaborative spirit across these traditionally siloed organizations. So we do need to clamp down on the areas that we are aware of. In that process, there will be new leaks and holes that come out, but I think it is correct that we have to constantly be reflecting on the gaps that do exist that allow this to happen. And people's livelihoods depend on this. The reason that we have so much money being squandered or stolen or lost is unacceptable. People do feel the effects of this on a day-to-day basis. So we have to fix these things so that money is used for the right things.
The regulations that are in place take a massive step forward in protecting the country as a whole from grey listing and recessions. They protect your livelihoods, essentially. Regulators are there to ensure that the value of the currency retains its value or remains in place. They also protect the people, the entities and individuals and their livelihoods from being attacked through cyber attack, through fraud, corruption, all those bad factors. So in my opinion, that's probably the biggest step forward. In terms of that, also the technology that we use, harnessing things like blockchain, harnessing things like cryptography, the improvements in technology and computing power, cloud technology, storage both locally and online in the cloud, your redundancy and so forth. These are the kind of things that you need to do to prevent failures when it comes to things like cyber attacks, malware attacks. Those are the kind of things that you really want to protect your organizations, individuals, and the country as a whole from experiencing.
Absolutely, and that's what makes me passionate working with my team. We get to really challenge ourselves to push the limits of what our current technology is, and what I enjoy is inventing that next layer of technology to allow us to do that. So, as an example, one of our goals is one day after the regulator releases that spec, to be ready with that end-to-end system to do that. And at the moment, that is still a crazy idea. But we're doing it, we're building it, we're practicing, we're getting there, we will get there. And that for me will be a game changer in terms of, if you realize you can do this, then I think it does change the way that we can clamp down on these opportunities. Just one other idea though, that my AI reflections surprised me. Like I didn't expect to sort of have this connection come through, but I asked AI what would the successes of regulatory reporting look like 10 years, if she imagines it's 10 years in future or 100 years in future, and she looks back at what were the wins. And AI's answer was incredibly articulated, and 10 bullet points of really plausible things that I could imagine one day might be the game changers, is more than the 4 or 5 bullet point items that I saw from any speaker. And those 10 bullet points give our journey and what we're building a lot more structure and a lot better reasons for why it matters, where previously I wasn't able to do a good enough job to say, that's why I think this new piece of technology or this new approach works. And that's something that I wasn't expecting. So I enjoyed that aspect.
The regulations that are in place take a massive step forward in protecting the country as a whole from grey listing and recessions. They protect your livelihoods, essentially. Regulators are there to ensure that the value of the currency retains its value or remains in place. They also protect the people, the entities and individuals and their livelihoods from being attacked through cyber attack, through fraud, corruption, all those bad factors. So in my opinion, that's probably the biggest step forward. In terms of that, also the technology that we use, harnessing things like blockchain, harnessing things like cryptography, the improvements in technology and computing power, cloud technology, storage both locally and online in the cloud, your redundancy and so forth. These are the kind of things that you need to do to prevent failures when it comes to things like cyber attacks, malware attacks. Those are the kind of things that you really want to protect your organizations, individuals, and the country as a whole from experiencing.
And so my team and I are really focusing on closing that regulatory gap, bringing that time and effort, not only for us on the technology side, but streamlining it for our clients. We're working so hard to bring that down as low as it possibly can be. And the main reason why we're doing that is because we've realized the deep connection between regulatory compliance and saving livelihoods. And because we're at the end of that regulatory chain, we are definitely seeing the need to close that loop back to the beginning, through the economy, through the regulators, back to where it matters, and that's people and their livelihoods. So we have to get this right, because South Africa and the world is in a very interesting place after COVID, and just with the advent of what's going on. We desperately need to be getting on track with these things, and this is our way that we can affect that process to close that loop.
I think in terms of compliance and regulatory reporting, what most organizations tend to miss is that it's there to protect the livelihoods. You know, often it's a grudge purchase by the organizations that have to do it, something that they feel they need to do just to keep their licensing for doing financial transactions or whatever the service may be. But really it's there to protect them, their organization, the individuals that work within that, as well as the country as a whole, the currency that they work with. You don't want to finance terrorism. You know, I don't want to finance terrorism. I certainly don't want to finance crimes of any sort, and neither does everyone else. So the reporting and the regulation work hand in hand to give the oversight to the necessary regulators and committees and organizations as well, to see what is transpiring at the lower levels.